My name is Miss Young. My business is real estate. But today we're going to talk about the rental requirements for New York. We're going to talk about the application. We're going to talk about the rental market, which is quite different than anywhere else. So one of the first things that I'd like to talk about is how competitive the rental market is in New York. So if you find an apartment and you decide to go look at it, I have had people who know how the rental market goes show up at any showings that I have done with a folder filled with all of the necessary paperwork that they would need to apply for an apartment if they found one that they liked. So in other words, because the competition is real, people, real, meaning if you go to look at an apartment, if you go to an open house, you probably will be looking at that apartment with maybe 10 other people that are also looking at that very same apartment. If it's well priced and well located and the amenities are great, you best believe that you will have competition. So that is why I suggest that if you are looking for an apartment to rent in New York, be prepared. And being prepared means having all of the documents that you will most likely be asked for in order to apply for an apartment. So, because the market is so competitive, I suggest this to everyone. Get your paperwork ready, know what you will need. Basically, you might not know everything. Different landlords may require something a little different. Most of the landlords will require the paperwork that I will talk to you about today. So let's get started. So, in my opinion, and not because I am a realtor, but I think in New York it's best to work with a realtor when looking for a rental. Because they know the market, they also know the landlords, and they may already have a stable of apartments to choose from that may be available for what you are looking for. So if you are new to New York and you are looking for an apartment, there are many ways of finding an apartment on Craigslist and all these different websites, but you will not get all the feedback or the information that you need on an apartment, on a location, as you can get by talking to a realtor. So, and the great news, which is not so great for realtors, but the great news for the public is that New York has recently, in February I believe, passed a law where they cannot ask for those realtor fees that they used to ask for. We used to get either 15% of the annual rent, which can be, it varies. It can be 15% of the annual rent, it can be 1 month's fee, it can be 12%, but it ranges between those three numbers. And that was a big amount, to be honest with you. But I would suggest that you go onto the Department of State's website for New York and look at the laws regarding the new broker fee, or the broker fee that they've now taken away, so that you're very updated or knowledgeable. It's really important to be knowledgeable about the rental laws when you are looking for a rental. And I will post the link for the Department of State for New York so that you can look up that commission law on your own. So like I said, the New York rental market moves very fast. When you go to an open house or you go for a viewing of an apartment, if you like the apartment or you think it's something that has met your expectations or your requirements, and you're thinking about applying for it or you want to think about it, just know if you go home and think about it, it may not be available if you decide to take it. So that's why I always tell people to be prepared and have their documents with them when they're going to look at a property, so that at least they can get the ball rolling and they can be the first one to submit their application if there are others also applying for that property. So that's just a little tip of mine to have your paperwork ready. And the paperwork that you will have ready is the paperwork that we're about to go over. So, one thing that I will say is New York's rental market, the landlords are the landlords don't feel like the laws in New York are good for landlords. They think it's better for the tenant. And one of the reasons why I believe they feel this way is that if you end up not paying your rent, it could take months for that landlord to get you out of that property. Not that they couldn't get you out, but it just takes longer than some other states. I think Georgia is shorter than New York in getting someone out. So while you're not paying rent, it's costing that landlord money. So before they even think about putting you into their apartment, they are going to make sure that you can fulfill the requirements that they're asking. And they're not very lenient. Okay, so they're very strict. They're very strict when it comes to the application process. So one of the things is your credit score. With the landlords that I have worked with, usually if you have at least a 700 and up, you're good. As long as you have no evictions on your credit report, you're good. And not a lot of outstanding debt, you know. Sometimes a lot of landlords, just a tip, some landlords, most of the landlords that I have worked with, they will overlook a student loan. If you have a student loan on your credit report, they kind of will overlook that. They really want to see if you've ever been evicted, to know that if you've ever skipped out on somebody's rent, or how you pay your bills, or how you don't pay your bills. So that's what they will look for. But like I said prior, all landlords are different, okay? Some look for different things, some look for a higher credit score, some will accept a lower credit score. It really depends. But if you know that your credit score is low, and you are applying for an apartment that you think that you really want, I would suggest that you find a guarantor, which we will get into a little bit later. First of all, credit score needs to be on point, okay, or at least up to a 700. Little less, give and take, you might get away with it. But 700 is what my landlords have looked for when it comes to a rental, 700 and up. Always get a free annual report of your credit score from the credit bureaus. I will also list that. I will list the credit bureaus down in the links below so that you can check. Now, if you're international and coming here for work or school, that means you don't have a credit score because you don't have credit history in this country. So what most people do, if they do not have a credit history, and I'm not talking about U.S. citizens or residents, I am talking about foreigners coming here for work or school. They live in another country, but they are residing in the U.S. for either business or for work or for school. So, usually you will have to get a guarantor. But I have also found that there are landlords who welcome international students or international people coming for business, because usually, okay, so let's talk about the 3 things before I start rambling. So one, you get a guarantor. That's somebody in the U.S. who has a credit history and a credit score. But they will need to make 80 times the monthly rent in order for them to be your guarantor. That's number one. Number two, I've seen landlords take a full year's worth of rent up front for a whole year because you do not have a credit score or credit history. So if you can pay the rent for an entire year, there's a company named Insurgent, I believe. I will also put the link for that. And it is a guarantor company that guarantees usually people that don't have credit history. But you do have to pay. There are fees involved in that. But that's pretty much the only way to get around getting around the credit history thing when it comes to working with landlords. So the paperwork that's required, one, you will need social security number, copy of your social security card. Your bank account numbers. You'll need bank statements for at least 2 months. Now, all of this varies on the landlord, but the majority of the landlords that I have worked with in the past, they require 2 months of past bank statements. They also will ask you for the name and contact information from your previous landlords. If you've lived in a property for maybe 1 year and lived somewhere else previously, they will want to have the landlord's names, both landlords' names. If you've lived in a property for 5 years, 10 years, 4 years, more than likely they will go off of your last previous landlord. You will also need an employment letter on your company's letterhead stating your position, your salary, and the length of employment. Okay? Now, if you are, this happens a lot, if you are somebody who's never ever had a job before and you are moving to New York, or you are in New York and you have gotten your first job and you are looking for a place, but you have no proof of income, more than likely they will ask you to get a letter from your company. This is for people who've never had a job before, who may be graduating, coming straight out of college. They will ask you to get a letter from your employee stating that when your start date is, like they have hired you, how much they will pay you, and what your position is. So you will need, either way, you will need a letter from your employee with the letterhead on there. And it's better to get this ahead of time, so that if you are applying for an apartment and now the landlord is asking you for that letter from your employer, but you have not yet got it, now you have to scramble to get it from your employer, and you know how employers can be with paperwork. Sometimes you have to wait for them to process it or write it or get the right person to sign off on it. Whatever the case, it takes a while. This will be holding you up from applying for the apartment, and in the meantime someone else may come in with all the paperwork and apply, and you're out. This is how fast the real estate market moves in New York when it comes to rentals. Also, a big thing which a lot of people are blown away back, but this is what they require, and not all, depending on where it is. And I find this to be a lot in Manhattan. It really used to exist in the outer boroughs. The outer boroughs are Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, and the Bronx. And the outer boroughs are like a little bit more residential. You can find maybe a little bit bigger space for better money, but it's all kind of changing with all this gentrification going on. So don't hold me to those prices. But they require, are you ready? Are you sitting down? Sit down for this one. Now, seriously, like if you're standing up, you're going to need to sit down, especially if you are planning or if you are in the process of moving to New York. One of the things that they require, or how they kind of tell you how much they think you should be able to make to be able to afford the apartment. Guess what that number is? It is 40 times the monthly rent. That is what they expect you to make in your annual salary in order to afford the apartment. Okay? 40 times the monthly rent. If your rent, this is a low rent, but if your rent is $2,000 a month, then they want you to make $80,000 a year. So you'll times your apartment rental amount times 40, which gives me 80,000. So that is what they want you to make annually. You're a little off from that 40%. Give and take, they may do it. I know landlords, they don't even go by that calculation. If you don't have credit and you have a guarantor, they have to make 80 times the monthly rent. So 80 times 2,000 would be 160. 160,000 a year. That's how much they would have to make in order for them to be your guarantor. It's clear. I know it's a little confusing, and I know it's a little mind-blowing that they would require you to make that much to pay the rent. But that is really a calculation that they use. If you're going to get roommates, and maybe there's 2 or 3 of you applying to be a roommate, 2 guarantors are allowed. I don't need to add up to the 160. So if you're in Manhattan, they use it. The outer bar, depending on where it is, they are also now starting to use it, but they've been using it. So I want you to keep that in mind, because that's the thing that blows people away, that they are not expecting to make. You know, you think if you just have a job and you pay your bills on time and you make the money, of course you want to know that you can afford it, but they make sure there's even a cushion there for you to be able to afford it. So keep that in mind. Most of the landlords I have known, they've asked for 2 months of paycheck stubs, but I have also come across some landlords who are extremely thorough, and they may require 3 months of paycheck stubs. Okay, and you have to produce them. They can't be old. They have to be the last consecutive weeks or months that you have to show. You can't show paycheck stub from 4 months ago when they're looking for the last consecutive paychecks for the last 2 or 3 months. So this is the paperwork that you can get going. You can start, not necessarily the paycheck stubs, but the letter from your employee, your bank statements, your social security, make copies, a copy of your ID, and also your last 2 years of tax returns, prior tax returns, your last consecutive 2 years of tax returns, they will require. You need to make sure, if you know that your credit score is not good or you're not going to meet the salary requirement, you may need a guarantor. Start looking for one from now. Don't wait until you find the apartment and then look for a guarantor. You will probably lose the apartment. So all of this is preparation for when you start looking, so that you are prepared that when you find that apartment that you've fallen in love with, you can apply for it immediately, and because Miss Young has prepared you. Okay, fees. So in February, New York State has passed a new law that real estate brokers cannot collect a fee from the potential tenant if they are representing the landlord. They are to get their fee from the landlord. So if you go looking at an apartment and the listing agent tells you you have to pay them a fee, you don't. They are supposed to collect it from the landlord that they are representing. There is a way that you can collect that you will have to pay a fee if you hire a realtor, but I'm going to let you read that on your own, the details of that, on the Department of State's website, which I will post a link down below so that you can click on it and get knowledgeable about what the laws are about real estate brokers and their fees. So normally there are application fees. Sometimes before this law passed, they didn't have application fees. It was kind of all blended into the commission. Application fees. When you fill out an application, you will have to pay an application fee. And it's different. It varies depending on the landlord. They usually charge you a credit check fee, and it's usually for each individual that's applying for the apartment. So if there are 3 of you applying, each one of you will have to pay an application fee for each application, and you'll have to pay for the credit check for each applicant. Now, some brokers may include the credit check fee in the application fees. So what I would say is when a broker tells you there's an application fee, find out what the application fee covers, because you may think that it covers the credit check and it may not. So you need to know what it covers. They can tell you what it covers. They should actually have some kind of document that lists out what the fees cover. So if you found an apartment that you like, in order to hold the apartment, a security deposit is usually the thing to hold it. So when you apply for that application, when you fill out that application and you hand it in, you're going to hand in a check for the security deposit. And this is you holding the apartment, showing that you are serious. Now, if you don't give a security deposit, they might find that you're not serious about really applying. You're just filling out paperwork. One security deposit, which is usually the equal amount of the rent. So if it's $2,000 in the rent, then it's usually $2,000 security deposit. Now, if you have a pet, some owners may require a pet fee, which is a pet security deposit. So I've seen up to a 500, I've seen 1,000 security deposit for a pet. This is in addition to your deposit. So if you have a cat or a dog and the landlord, isn't sure if your landlord is not going to know if your dog scratches, or so just to protect himself, they may ask for a deposit. Everything is signed. Make sure that everyone has a copy of the signed lease. If you have roommates, make sure each one of you has a copy. If it's just you, make sure that you have a copy, and you should scan it and keep it in a safe place so that if anything ever comes up, you have a copy of the sign. If it's not signed, it means nothing. And pretty much that is it. So I wish you all the best in looking for an apartment if that's what you are here for. And if you have any questions, you can always put them in the comment box. So if you want to state your experience that you've had with realtors, or with the process of applying for an apartment, or if there's something that I missed out that you feel is very relevant, please, we all can learn from each other. Please add it to the comment box. And I would really thank you for taking the time out to watch this video. And I really, really hope that it was informative, because I moved to New York and I had no idea about the rental process. And sometimes you don't think about these things when you're young and you're moving. So it's really important. And another quick tip that I want to give, if you're not sure about what the cost of rentals are in New York, because they're really expensive, and you have an idea of where you want to live, start looking online for pricing and square footage, so that you can have an idea of what it is that you're going to be paying, so that you know whether you can afford it. There's a lot of people that move to New York and they cannot afford to live there because they maybe haven't found a job yet. So one of the things I would suggest is maybe like renting a room with somebody, like renting out somebody's room or their couch, or however you'd like to do it prior to finding an apartment, so that you can check out different neighborhoods and get a feel for New York. Because once you sign on the dotted line for that apartment, it's yours. Alright, like, comment. That's what they say that you gotta say. Like, comment, and subscribe. Miss Young's real estate business is my business. Now it's gonna be your business, because I'm gonna make sure that I share everything that I can with you, so that you are more informed about the rental business in New York. I will also make videos about sales, DIY projects, house maintenance, property maintenance, anything relating to real estate. I'm here for you. Okay, keeping it real, keeping it real. Check you on the next video. Check you on the next video.